manager, the office manager, he's talking to me, and I'm just staring over his shoulder, looking up at the thing, and he turns around, looks at it, and he goes, "I told y'all she was coming to put that away."
You're listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, where HIPAA and humor collide to make learning fun. Your delightful hosts are Donna Grindle and David Sims. Relax, HIPAA help is on the way.
Welcome to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast. My name is David Sims of HIPAA for MSPs, and joining me is Donna Grindle of Cardin Compliance. So you might just drop the compliance, huh?
Yeah, I'm thinking about it.
Well, the word, not the work. Just the word.
Just the word. It's all in branding, right? So we are now we're trying to find a way to describe ourselves, and we are the Information Privacy and Security Advisors.
I like it.
Yeah, so we advise you on whatever you need for information privacy and security. Woo! We're going to talk about why that matters in just a little bit.
Yeah, I know. Well, it's getting to where, it all started kind of with compliance, but it's not about compliance anymore. I know we say that at the end about patient care, but it's not even that anymore. No. It's like, it's not going crazy.
Yeah. And pay attention, people. We're about to go down a new path.
Yes.
It's coming.
If you're needing if you need any help with your information privacy and security, then look them up at Cardin HQ, as in help me quickly.
Yeah.
.com.
I'm using that now. Thanks, David.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah. And if you're an IT provider or MSP and you need some help with HIPAA, then go to HIPAA4MSPs.com.
Yeah,
we'll be there to help you out.
Yes, we all help you.
All right. So where are you going to be here in the next couple months?
Well, things are really picking up on that. I fielded 4 different speaking engagement conversations just yesterday.
Nice.
I know. But the Ambulatory Surgical Conference for Georgia, South Carolina, that's February 16th in the ATL. It's
coming up.
In the perimeter area, so that's cool. And then the very next week, I am speaking on February 22nd on insider threats at the 2nd annual HIPAA with the Experts Breakfast Seminar.
Nice.
I know.
So now you get to be an expert.
Yeah, no, I'm in there with the experts. Whoa! And then April 22nd to the 25th, I'm going to be in Newport Beach, California at the JAWS Society Annual Conference, where I'm speaking there. I don't know, maybe ransomware at the right things are going.
I know.
And we've got people calling us about the boot camp, David, so we've got to get on it.
Ooh, that's on our agenda.
Yeah.
It's on my list.
Yeah, and we do need input if somebody's interested in it's a virtual boot camp where we break it up and do it online and do it over, I don't know, a couple of weeks or a couple of days. Please provide input. But the HIPAA boot camp, if you're interested, you can go there, or you can also send us something at contact@helpmewithhipaa.com.
Nice. Yeah. So I was on an hour and a half long webinar yesterday at mspwebinars.com, interviewing me about HIPAA and stuff.
Did you say
I made
my
sure
name?
Within the first 5 minutes, I threw it out there. I was like, if Donna watches this, I want her to make sure she don't have to watch the whole thing to know I said her name.
Yeah.
So, yeah. It was an interesting discussion because everybody there was, of course, IT professionals, and some of the questions that came through were really good questions.
Mm-hmm.
Some were really interesting questions. You still get some of the people that's like, well, I know that's what it says, but it's so confusing. You can't possibly say that's really what it means. I'm like, okay. I mean, it's pretty clear in a lot of things. Quit using the whole, it's too confusing, I don't have to follow it,
Yeah. Yeah, you go ahead. You pick your side, I'll pick mine.
Yeah. But I love the ones that says, well, if it's such a big deal for IT, then why hasn't anybody in IT been fined yet? And I'm like, oh my gosh.
Do you realize they're just processing still the ones from 2012?
I know. It's like, we ain't even got that far yet. But if you want to be the first, you go right ahead.
Yeah.
Don't mind it. So anyway, Moving right along, for those of you who like to sponsor the show or be what we call a patron, then you can go to our Patreon account at helpmewithhipaa.com/give. And thank you once again for those of you who are helping to keep the lights on here at Help Me With HIPAA. We really appreciate it.
And if you're interested in sponsoring us, you can also get information. But I think it's helpmewithhipaa.com/sponsor. We'll have to look.
Yeah,
send us some information if your company's interested. Send us an email, and we'll figure out what our link is.
Yeah, we don't know right now. Also, don't forget we have an app for that. Help Me With HIPAA. Not only is it an app so you can listen to the show, but it also has a PDF of the show notes that you can use for your HIPAA training documentation. Because we know if you didn't document it,
it didn't happen.
That's right.
You're going to get that down yet.
Yeah, sooner or later. So finally, in housekeeping, don't forget, review us, like us, Facebook, Twitter, wherever else we're at. Good grief, we're all over the place now. We're on Spotify now.
Yeah.
So let's dive into our 6 cybersecurity lessons in the news for this week. And trust me, we narrowed this way down.
I was struggling. Well, there's so many things that are hitting the news. It was like everybody was taking a nap during the holidays, and then it's January's hit and it's exploded.
I know.
And I just couldn't decide. Some of these aren't big enough discussions. We could make a whole episode out about anything. But
yeah, I always know when it's a week full of news when instead of me sending people information, they're sending it to me. It's like, check this out. I'm like, yeah, it's so much it's spilling over into the normal people.
The normal people, yeah. All right, number 1 is near and dear to your heart.
Yeah, so I got an email earlier in the week, and it was like, check this out. North Carolina has announced they're introducing a bill this month, and it's called the Act to Strengthen Identity Theft Protections, and it's by the Attorney General Josh Stein and Representative Jason Sain, because apparently they've seen enough of the breaches that have happened.
Yeah, they got the report on how bad it was on North Carolina citizens, and they were like, I'm done with this. But it's one of, they say it's the toughest data breach notification law in the United States. And
if it passes.
yeah, it's the toughest proposal. But, a lot of times you're going from a negotiation standpoint. So you start way out there to negotiate your way back to where you want to be. Still, this one, wow. It's
I know.
Even if you negotiate to the middle, there's a lot.
Right. I know. The little fact sheet came out. We'll link to this in the show notes. But, first thing they did was updated what constitutes a security breach, which was kind of alarming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because when I was reading this, I read it a couple of times. Let me make sure. Any incident of unauthorized access to or acquisition of someone's personal information is a breach, period.
Wow.
And this will now include ransomware attacks when personal information is accessed, because that's, OCR says that it's accessed because someone outside of your control has accessed it by encrypting it, but is not necessarily acquired. So they didn't actually take it. And then here comes the, so any incident, you must notify both the affected consumers and the Attorney General's office, which will empower the affected consumer and the Attorney General to determine the risk of harm, not the breached organizations.
Ooh.
Yeah. So you don't get to decide anymore.
So a couple things here that jump out at me. One is that the notification as it is pretty strong. There's no, if it's so many people, you have to notify the attorney generals. And if it's so little people, you don't. The other part of it is I wonder if the attorney general's office knows what they're asking for.
I don't think so.
I mean, they're going to be overwhelmed.
Yeah. The volume, the sheer volume it could be surprising to them. I don't think they know how often it happens, but they are locking down. I mean, one of the reasons there was a change in the HIPAA breach notification rule between the interim final rule that came out 2009-ish and the final rule, which is 2013, was if you allow the breached organization to determine harm without any kind of, I mean, before it just said, if you believe there's been harm, then you need to notify. Well, who's going to say there's been harm? There is no evidence that there's been harm. And that's what was happening. And so that's why they changed it to say, you have to do this assessment and answer these questions. Mm-hmm. And there's still people who skip those questions and decide there's no harm. But I make them go through it, answer the questions. And even when you have, I've had IT people argue with us that it's not an issue.
That doesn't happen.
And I'm like, well, then answer question number 2. How will we answer this? Because we're required by law to answer this question. You go ahead and tell us how to answer it. Crickets.
So the next part of it talks about tighter data protection. And this was one of the ones I was like, finally. And then I was like, ooh.
Wait a minute.
But this one imposes a duty for a business that owns or licenses personal information to implement and maintain reasonable security procedures and practices.
Appropriate to the nature of the personal information.
Mm-hmm.
And that's key. Because the next thing is, it's including medical information and insurance account numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you've got somebody's name and email address, that's different as far as what's reasonable than if you have medical information and social security numbers and financial information.
Yeah. So now we get to hear the whole argument from everybody else is what is reasonable?
Hello. Welcome to our world.
But it is getting easier to actually answer that question because, there are things in place, believe it or not, there are standards and frameworks out there that that you can't really say that was not reasonable when you're following a standardization that's put out by a national institute.
Well, and I think that's one of the biggest reasons that we have started including the National Cybersecurity Framework by the NIST organization or the National Institute for Standards and Technology. Boom. As you mentioned, there's institutes and stuff. But we've started including the National Cybersecurity Framework in what we're doing with policies and procedures and advising people. We're including things that cross-reference to HIPAA, but we're also bringing in new elements that help us meet the standards of HIPAA from the cybersecurity framework. So we're expecting any time now that draft finalization of version 1.1, which does bring in some interesting things into the cybersecurity framework because it addresses supply chain management. Hello, business associates. So to me, if you could say that I am following the National Cybersecurity Framework, that makes a pretty good argument to say that's reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying.
I agree.
Oh, well, thank you.
Well, what's going to be interesting, too, about this point, and of course, this is just North Carolina for now, but the medical information part, does this mean that, if a medical office has a breach, they now have to do something different with state than they do with federal? Or is the federal going to trump it? Or?
There's other states where this happens, and so the rule is, HIPAA trumps state as long as state is less, has fewer requirements. But once the state has more stringent requirements, then it takes over. Now, HIPAA doesn't go away, but you can't say, well, I follow HIPAA, so I don't have to follow the state.
Right.
And this one, go ahead.
I was going to say another dangerous part about this is that, not all medical information is protected health information.
Exactly.
But in the case of the state, it is now saying that there's not a difference.
Well, they haven't published the text of the law that I have seen, which, That's key, because then you'll know exactly when we say this is what we mean is often part of the actual law. And what does "the" mean is often in there now. But, once they publish that, then it'll be a real indication that we're working off the summary, not the actual text of the law.
Right. So moving right along to the next part of it, quicker consumer notification. Woo-hoo.
15 days.
Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah, I mean, if you've been, you've been breached, you got 15 days. But they're saying this will allow consumers to freeze their credit, report to all the agencies, and take preventative measures so that they can prevent identity theft, not be reactive, but be proactive, which is so often what occurs. And they did stick a bunch of stuff in there, and they even mentioned Equifax. They put a ton of stuff in there about if it's a breach at a, clearinghouse or credit reporting agency like Equifax, that they even have to provide 5 years of free credit monitoring. Well, now you got my attention, because the 1 year I think becomes irrelevant. That's a PR move. But 5 years, now that matters. So, and then the penalties.
Yeah, the penalties. Oh, that's crazy. So, a business that suffers a breach and failed to maintain reasonable security procedures, there you go, reasonable.
You have to prove that you are.
Right. They will have committed a violation of the act, and each person affected by the breach represents a separate and distinct violation of the law. Right.
So they're pointing to the Unfair and Deceptive Trade Practices Act. Mm-hmm. So basically, you've committed fraud. It falls under that same Unfair and Deceptive Trade Practices Act. So you have it at the state level and you have it at the federal level. So imagine this, that, now they would then have the ability to sue you and bring, criminal things, anything that's under that Unfair Trade Practices Act, which I don't know all the details. I started glancing through it, but then that law would then apply to you because of a data breach.
Yeah.
And you have to prove then whether or not you've maintained reasonable security procedures.
And the whole point of all this really is not to freak out over it, but just to say you should be protecting this data anyway.
Right. So, I mean, it's just like we've been saying we've been saying it for like 2 years, and finally our crystal ball wasn't very clear, apparently, as far as to when, but it's coming. It's not just about medical anymore. It's not about HIPAA anymore. This is about the world we live in and securing the information, which is our most valuable resource.
Right.
That's why you need information privacy and security advisors.
Yeah. So for all you IT people out there that are, in the security, healthcare, HIPAA, small business space, listen up.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. It ain't going to stop there. That there'll be people passing along the liability and everything else. So
you just went through this whole discussion with some,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Those business associate agreements are starting to get really squirrely, folks. You better be paying attention and not just signing them.
Yeah. I don't like it. Trust me. I mean, I don't want to take on any liability. I mean, unless I do something wrong, but I mean, I'm not taking liability to somebody else. And that's what some of them are asking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but
we don't care if it's your fault or not.
Well, but, patients don't care. The covered entities hire the business associate, and we keep saying it's the covered entity that takes the hit. And they're trying to find a way, because the patients don't care that, the covered entity didn't do anything wrong. It was their business associate that did something wrong.
Right.
And that's why they're trying to get you to stand up and say it. But the problem is the patients don't know who you are.
Right.
So they'll think it doesn't matter to them. So it becomes a catch-22 as far as, we're going to tell them, but then you send them a letter saying, well, David Sims made a mess. And they're like, who the heck's David Sims and why do I care? It's got to tie back to where things came from.
That podcast guy?
Everybody be Googling David.
So that brings us to our second one, Hawaii.
What a mess.
So, they had this ballistic missile scare, which everybody, everybody knows that. That was bad enough. I couldn't imagine.
That was absolutely terrifying to those people. 38 minutes of thinking that there's a missile aimed at you and you're about to blow up.
I know. It's crazy.
There's some very poignant things that people were sending each other. And I saw some interviews where people said they really see now, after experiencing that 38 minutes, they see now how ill-prepared they are.
Yeah. I'm just glad it didn't go all War of the Worlds.
I know, really. And for those of you young folks that don't understand that, you just go look it up.
Yeah, really.
But there's another piece to that involves cybersecurity.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't know whether to laugh or just shake my head at it.
I know. When you sent it to me, I had just seen it, and then it pops in from you. And, it reminds me of walking into my client offices, but unfortunately, this was a file photo.
It's even worse.
This has been around for a while, and it's a photo of, I think it's the Center for Emergency Response or whatever they call it that was responsible for the ballistic missile alert. It was a photo that's been there for a while of that center. But what did the photo reveal, David?
Well, you have a guy standing there with a computer in the background. and on the computer is a big old yellow Post-it note that says password with the password on it.
Yeah. It's security.
I don't know, dude. It's the bad thing about it is we see it a lot. I mean, do you recall the picture I sent you that time where the guy had like 40 passwords taped to his laptop? He
had run out of room.
Yeah, it was like Blue Cross Blue Shield password, Cigna password,
email passwords.
And they're just
taped all over it. Yep.
It was ridiculous.
It really reminds me, though, of the time I was this is right after HIPAA became a thing. And so this shows you how far back my HIPAA paranoia goes. HIPAA had just become a thing. It was probably 2006, I want to say. Mm-hmm. And I was at a client site, and I walk into, they had a really interesting office that was in an old building. And so I walk into this back room to look at some computer problems, and they're in the back corner. So no one ever goes in there. No public people ever go in there. This is just where you work, right? There's a bulletin board up there with all this stuff stuck to it. And one of them it says right at the top, list of passwords. And he's the manager, the office manager, he's talking to me, and I'm just staring over his shoulder, looking up at the thing. And he turns around, looks at it, and he goes, I told y'all she was coming to put that away. Same kind of stuff, man. You knew the picture was being taken. Put that away.
Yeah. I don't know that we'll ever get away from these password things being a problem.
No.
I don't.
Until we can spit in a cup and it's a DNA authentication.
So I do have a great password story that happened yesterday.
I hadn't heard this.
So I won't say who did it, but there's a way to use LastPass where LastPass generates passwords for you, correct?
Correct.
And of course the passwords are super strong, and we don't even try to remember them because LastPass will. Mm-hmm. So this person allowed LastPass to generate a super long secure password. They put it into their online banking information, hit save, and then close LastPass.
And lost it.
Saving the password. So they can't get into their bank account. So they call the bank, and the bank says, we have to mail you your password.
There's a way to get.
So it's going to take 5 days before they can get back into their banking account.
No, there's a way. There's a way you can find it.
Anyway, I thought maybe there was a history of passwords you generate.
The easiest thing is if you haven't closed it, then it's easy. Yeah.
I thought it was funny, but kudos to using LastPass.
You're making fun of people for being secure. You need to back off, brother.
It was just funny because I was so close to the incident. That's all I'll say.
Oh, never mind. I know exactly what you're probably talking about. Yeah.
And you know me, if I can find some way to poke somebody, I will.
Yeah, especially that person. So,
So anyway, that moves us on to
Number 3.
how you do not want to find out you had a device stolen.
That's right. So, we always get this question when we're telling people you need to have policies and procedures on disposal and why you might want to consider encrypting desktops and not just, other devices. And the big one is why you need an inventory of devices that you actually maintain and keep up with. Mm-hmm. And no one ever wants to do that. No one. Mm-hmm. Here's why you want to do those 3 things. And we got 2 examples of why that's important. Mm-hmm. So, David, you got so tickled about this one. You go ahead and share the first one.
So this guy, January 8th, this guy reportedly contacted the hospital. This is Advocate Lutheran General Hospital in Park Ridge.
Somewhere.
Park Ridge somewhere.
Illinois, I think.
So the guy calls the hospital and says, "Hey, I bought a computer that has apparently belonged to you guys, and I need help unlocking it." They're like, "What? We hadn't sold any computers."
Well, why would we have that? And it was, thankfully it was encrypted, and that's why they couldn't get in it. So that one policy decision saved them from this being a breach.
Yeah, I could just see somebody like at a pawn shop or a flea market, all these computers out there.
Yeah, and I don't know where this person was from. I mean, somewhere not right down the street kind of thing. And I don't know that they know, it's Illinois, and I don't know that they even are aware of how it got to this individual.
I'm wondering too, though, because I've seen this before where it's like, hey, we've got all these old computers, somebody get rid of them. And they just box them all up in a back of a truck and take them to Goodwill.
I know. And so this brings to, the forefront of the point is you need an inventory of devices and where they are living to know when something's gone. Mm-hmm. And when you are going to get rid of some devices, you need disposal procedures and checklists to make sure that you're not sending them out with data on them. And then encryption of all devices is what covers you when those 2 fail.
Yeah. Just please don't forget to save the encryption key.
Oh, yes, please. Have encryption key management as part of your policies and procedures. But again, it's layers of security. If you don't have layers, there's going to be some failure. Mm-hmm. And that whole concept, when we have a discussion about should you encrypt desktops or not, is becoming more and more important, that you evaluate it, because if there's anything on there, anything, you don't know what's going to happen. And just to reiterate the point, this was another one. This one came out in December, and the minute I read the news story, it reminded me of the previous story. So I had to go get back and we got to include this, because this just reiterates that point of knowing where your stuff is. Mm-hmm. Because this was a lawsuit between a former employee and their employer, and it's, a detailed lawsuit. So, and it's healthcare, of course. This one's in San Antonio. And in the court proceedings, they find out that that the employee who left in May, when they're filing all of their paperwork for the lawsuit in November, the healthcare entity learned that the employee had a laptop that had 28,433 patients in some sort of spreadsheet or something, who knows, but a database on that laptop that they were able to walk away with. So here again, inventory, termination checklist, know where your stuff is.
And they probably said, we don't have any patient information on any of those laptops.
I'm sure. Well, and even then, it's like, well, you encrypt it, but, the people that are using the laptop are the ones that have the encryption key.
Yeah. And another thing about encryption too is some devices, although encrypted, will still boot straight up to the Windows login.
Mm-hmm. So clearly, 2 cases of how you don't want to find out your stuff's out there. Mm-hmm. One is it shows up and you learn about it in court documents. And the other is you learn about it when somebody's silly enough to call and go, hey, can you get me into this computer?
That's funny. Wow.
So have an inventory, have a termination checklist, have a plan, track these things. Here's the reason why. So on to the next piece, which is...
So number 4, ransomware is spreading like the flu.
Yeah, I mean, I have to tell you, I don't know, maybe you're fortunate enough to not be in the same place, but I haven't dealt with as many ransomware discussions since maybe the end of 2016, one right after another, than in the last 3 weeks. And wow. So it's been almost a year, right at a year since I've had this many cases where people are saying ransomware question. And surprisingly, there's still vast majority of people don't understand what you have to do in ransomware with healthcare. I was just educating somebody on it this morning. And, it's, thankfully when I say you need these things, X, Y, and Z, at least some people believe me now. But, I'm involved in a couple of those cases right now where people are dealing with it and healthcare is under attack, particularly hospitals. So if you're affiliated with the hospital or, they're looking for healthcare, so they're after you. And speaking of that, there's news that came out yesterday and it's kind of been, and I'm sure there's stuff that's come out overnight and this morning I haven't had a chance to look for, but Allscripts, which is a very large EHR practice management vendor, has been hit by a ransomware attack in their North Carolina data centers in Raleigh and Charlotte. And we're not going to blame you, David.
What, me?
Yeah. But it's more than once that we've had a data center, or we've heard stories of a data center being hit and it being a situation that affects everybody in the data center. Mm-hmm. So it'll be interesting to hear what occurs in the next few days and what comes out about this, going back to, hey, the North Carolina law, David, and the more or less response that they have to have as a business associate. Yeah. But a bigger thing is I've heard some folks this affected their cloud version, not their server version. It also affected some of their modules in the server version, but their cloud version is the one that's hit. And so all those folks, you and I hear it all the time. We have a cloud, so we don't have to worry about blah, blah, blah. We don't need contingency plan. We don't need business continuity. We don't need disaster recovery because we're in the cloud.
Right.
Well, here you go. You don't know how long you're going to be down, and what are you going to do? And we're not talking down for an hour or two. We're talking, Nuance got hit, and they're under a ton of lawsuits, as I understand it, after the NotPetya outbreak.
Wow.
Because they were really, really down. And all of these healthcare groups counted on the Nuance cloud services to be able to do all of their patient records and dictation. So
it's like we always say, you have to plan for everything to go wrong, not for everything to go right.
Exactly. Yeah, you don't buy insurance for everything to go right. So speaking of everything going right, on to number 5. CMS made a mess.
No. Yeah, I'm still trying to figure this one out.
I am too, but so HCCA.
To be or not to be? That's what this one should be
to
titled.
Text or not to text? That is the question.
Yeah.
So HCCA, which is the Healthcare Compliance Association, I'm a member of that, and they pay attention to compliance issues. And they said that they had talked to a couple of hospitals that said, CMS said Medicare providers can't use any text messaging for healthcare, not even the secure ones.
I bet you the vendors went nuts when they heard that.
Well, not only that, but according to the news story from HCCA, that CMS had sent emails to at least 2 hospitals. So they had emails that said texting is not permitted, and it includes secure messaging applications saying that they were worried about privacy and security and the integrity of medical records. The Security and Certification Group of CMS doesn't allow texting, and they say after meeting with vendors regarding these products, it was determined they cannot always ensure the privacy and confidentiality of PHI being transmitted. This resulted in a no texting determination. And
these things have been around a while. You just now looking at them.
Yeah, and I'm wondering what was it about it, because there are some pretty solid secure ones that,
I know.
And so, and they even clarified it. They went back to them and said, what about such and such? And they said, no texting, none. So, that made a mess. It stirred everything up because now everybody's like, what can we do? What can we do? And that was published on December 18th. So then CMS publishes a memo to everybody on December 28th. And in the memo, they clarify texting patient information among members of the healthcare team is permissible if accomplished through a secure platform. But texting of patient orders is prohibited regardless of the platform utilized. So you can talk about a patient between the care team, but if you want to send an order in, you've got to use the order entry system of the hospital or, the actual computer system or an app. No texts.
Interesting.
I know. So that's going to, loop back around to us. We just had one about how texting is not secure by default. We did an episode around Halloween, I want to say, that says, we were talking about this particular topic. So, no, texting is not secure, but now they're showing concerns about the security level after talking to the vendors. So you got to wonder what went wrong there.
Yeah, that is kind of interesting.
Yeah. So let's get number 6 done.
Number 6, why you don't assume you're okay.
Yeah, here's why. And this one, I'm like, they just, just like we talk about insiders make a mistake that lets, the bad guys in. The bad guys have insiders who make mistakes that let the good guys in. And researchers just happened to stumble on this server that some of the bad guys, a collective, had accidentally left exposed and could be found. And this tracked back to Lebanon. So we're not talking Russia. We're not talking China. We're talking Lebanon. And it is a, state-sponsored hacker group is what they're claiming. And they have been since 2012. 2012. That's what I'm saying.
Wow.
It's an Android social engineering hack. So they've been able to steal user credentials. And all they do is send them a phishing attack on WhatsApp or Facebook. And that's where it starts. But this group has been apparently able to do some devious stuff, monitor everything that's going on that Android device. It's like they get like a back door to it or something, and they get credentials to everything else that's on the device.
I just want my old flip phone back.
I know, that's what a lot of people say. If you have your flip phone, don't let them make fun of you. Say, I'm secure. But it's apparently this group, Dark Carousel, I don't know how it's pronounced, but they have been conducting multi-platform cyber espionage campaigns and linked to 90 indicators of compromise, including 11 Android malware cases, 26 desktop malware across Windows, Mac, and Linux, and 60 different domains and IP-based attacks.
Wow. They've been busy.
Yeah. So these are not somebody that they're just kind of hanging out, having some fun in a basement trying to see who can outdo somebody. They are actively pursuing information, and they know I can find a little piece of information here and a little piece here and a little piece here that takes me to a big piece somewhere else. And so that's what they keep doing. But you definitely need to reach that point where you can't say, oh, we're fine. You just can't. Mm-hmm. I don't. And I'm not saying people need to be as paranoid as you and I are, but they got to be more paranoid than they are right now.
Well, it's the whole safety thing, right? I mean, if you're in a job where you understand the risk and you're kind of always looking for the dangers, then you keep yourself safer, right?
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, with technology, it's kind of a hidden thing. It's hidden in plain sight a lot of times, but it's hidden. Yeah. And so it doesn't get the same attention. Yeah,
people just don't get it. These are fairly new concepts. When you look at, it's kind of a teeny little drop in the even just American history, much less human history. So we haven't been having this level of activity to worry about and things to address, and so it's new, and we got to get everybody involved. It's the only way we're going to win, or at least have a fighting chance.
Bring on those desktop licenses.
Oh, God. All right, but this is the news, and you can see. I mean, we don't ever have a shortage of information that we're reading every day, and being able to use it in our training classes. We adapt our assessment questionnaires, our policies and procedures. We adapt our audits to address some of these things, and it's based on real world issues, not some nerd telling you what to do. Or a law or anything else. These are real world problems, and you just don't want to be part of it.
So, I mean, if you're using somebody who is focused on information privacy and security or IT, I would think you should probably have to hear from them fairly frequently if they're really keeping up with what's going on.
Well, yeah, just Meltdown Inspector is still going on.
Yeah.
That's going to go on for a while.
Right.
You should be regularly asking where you stand, because devices are having major problems in some cases on their updates. So you want to have a regular question of where do we stand on Meltdown Inspector, because no one's using it yet. So get your patches in now.
Mm-hmm.
Get it while the patch is good.
Patch your breaches.
Okay, there we are. We're finally done for today.
I made sure of that. All right. Don't forget, folks, remember to follow us, share us out on your favorite social media site, rate us on your podcasting apps, and everywhere else that you can spread the word. We definitely appreciate it. And as always, for Donna and myself, remember, the HIPAA is not about compliance. It's about patient care.
You've been listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, hosted by Donna Grindle and David Sims. The show created to help you with HIPAA. For more information or to ask us a question, visit our website at helpmewithhipaa.com. Neither Donna Grindle or David Sims are attorneys, and they do not offer binding legal advice concerning regulatory compliance. The information in this podcast should not be relied upon or construed as legal advice in any way. Consult your attorney for legal advice concerning compliance with HIPAA regulations.